What is new? Well, the most recent development is that I had a motorcycle stolen from me just this weekend.
What?
Yeah.
From where?
Just down the hill from the farm.
Shit.
Yeah, so it sucks a little bit, and yeah, it's kind of a dead end area leading into a space where people go dirt biking all the time. So it's a
Right.
little sketchy here and there. Sometimes people drive up to the top of the hill and sleep there overnight.
Yeah.
And occasionally you'll see people drag a stolen car up there and flip it over and part it out and light it on fire, maybe.
Whoa.
Who knows? It's like the Wild West, kind of, but it's crazy how close it is. It's super close to downtown.
I mean, I've seen the skyline from your perspective.
Yeah. 5 minutes to Highland Park, 5 minutes to South Pasadena, 5 minutes to El Sereno.
Yeah.
So it's this semi-green space that's not quite a park, so there's no real supervision. And things happen, It's best of both worlds / worst of both worlds.
So how do you steal a motorcycle?
Well, there are several ways to steal a motorcycle. If you're not going that far, you literally could sometimes just push it away. They're heavy enough where people usually don't lock them up per se. But then there are things that you can do. I had a U-lock on the front of this motorcycle, so it couldn't be rolled away. Unfortunately, it's a very light motorcycle, so two heavy people, could just carry it away.
So they didn't hot wire it and peel out.
No, but that is something you could do, honestly. Especially older motorcycles are very simple, and there's really no metal cage to have to get into. Everything's just there. So, yeah, you could. Even with old Honda bikes, they had only so many keys, and they had the code written on the key. So if you had enough old Honda keys, you could just look for the right one that matches the ignition.
So when Charlie was trying to get into the pirate door,
yes,
he was trying to get into a Honda motorcycle.
It's not unreasonable.
It's not unreasonable, exactly.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
Makes sense. Actually, my first car was a Chevy Nova, which is technically a Toyota Corolla. And I had read that Toyota Corollas of that era in the late 80s had a thing where you could sort of interchange the keys, if they're worn. And one night after my shift at the pizza place, on my way home, I saw the exact same car. So I pulled over, I pulled the parking brake, left it running because my key actually came out of the ignition.
I had a car like that, yeah.
Yeah. So I just pulled the key out while my car was running. I walked over, I went over to the car, and I unlocked the door. And I was like, oh, shit, this does work. And then I quickly locked it.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I quickly locked it and ran back to my car, got back in, and took off. Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah, extremely illegal, but, worth an experiment, I suppose.
Yes, so definitively, if Charlie was dealing with 70s Honda motorcycles or late 80s Toyota Corollas, it possibly could have worked. He could have gained access to the pirate door.
It's pretty funny how we yearn for the simpler days of car safety. Okay, shall we?
Let's do this.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of It's Always Stockholm in Los Angeles. My name is Nate Harold, and I'm joined by Chicken Dad 420, Will Noon.
Hi, yes, it's me.
Today, we are talking about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Season 3, Episode 8, Frank Sets Sweet D on Fire. This episode, directed again by Savage Boy 69.
Hell yeah.
Fred Savage.
Freddie Sav.
Yeah, has he directed every episode so far?
Yeah, he's doing it here. And I don't know what I was watching, but I was just watching something, and I saw his name come up on the credits.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I forget what it was, but he's been doing it. He's been doing his thing.
I don't really want to type into Google and look it up, but I do feel like this was maybe early in his directing days.
I see.
Doing tons of Sunny episodes.
Yeah.
All of Season 3. This episode was written by Rob McElhenney, Scott Marder, and Rob Russell. Basically, in this episode, Dee and Dennis want to become famous Paris Hilton style famous, where you don't really do anything and you become famous.
Dirty, drunken whore.
And the rest of the gang want to make the news happen.
Right.
And hilarity ensues.
Yes, very much so.
That's my quick synopsis. I can't really think of any other way to describe it. This episode kind of stuck out a little bit to me because I feel like the A and B plots were so crazy different.
Yeah.
Compared to other episodes where the way that they meet up is Dee just like walking in like, well, the B plot didn't work for me, so now I'm in the A plot.
Right. But if you think about it, there is a little bit of a tie where she wants to be famous. She doesn't care how, though. Yeah. So in her initial instance, she just wants to be famous for being famous, and the club thing doesn't work out for her. So, they're doing the news thing. So she's like, yeah, newscaster, that's fine. I'll just be famous however.
Yeah. I'm more talking about how she like just literally walked into it being like, well, that didn't work. What are you guys doing?
Yeah. She's literally walking home from the club and runs into them.
Yeah, because I feel like in other episodes, they kind of like weave in and out. Like certain characters kind of go back and forth or whatever. But this one's pretty separated until Dee just literally walks into the scene. Shall we just start talking about this episode?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get this on the books.
Well, I just wanted to say, since we're at the beginning of the episode, that the way that this episode starts is really fucking great. It's like the 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, the standard intro. Always Sunny opening. Establishing what day and time it is, which usually pretty inconsequential.
Yeah.
Inconsequential here too, but I love how it's still black. Like we're not seeing anyone, and you just hear Frank say,
"God damn, I'm bored."
It's just really funny to me.
Right. And this is sort of Frank's MO. He doesn't always come up with the scheme, but he's always down to accelerate the plot. He seems to want to jump in on what everyone else is doing. He wants in on the action. He often talks about that. He's like, what's the action? He just wants to take whatever they're doing and go to an extreme level with it. And that's what Dee really reacts to, And so when Frank hears about Mac and Charlie and their news show, He wants in. He's like, I'm going to get in. And that's when Dee freaks out because she says, whenever you get involved, someone gets hurt.
That's ridiculous. I'm just palling around with the guys. How's anybody going to get hurt?
Yeah. That's it. We may have skipped some things, but,
If you want to do like a bit more of like a general, you said like what your favorite scenes.
Ooh.
All I was going to say about that is that this episode really resonated with me because I wasn't a club kid, but I do love that, for lack of a better term, club music. And also, I've Been on Fire, which we'll get to later. So there's those two things that really resonated with me. How about you?
Well, yeah, that's something to look forward to. I've never been on fire, although I have started many fires. I was a bit of a pyro in my youth and maybe still currently. And as for clubs, I don't really love club music. I don't love clubs. I like the theory of them, kind of. Yeah. In practice, not so much.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't really see you enjoying that. Anyway, so first scene, as we've already established, Frank says, "Goddamn, I'm bored." Dee and Dennis are reading In Touch. This really reminded me of the when Dee and Dennis start a podcast. It's a very similar.
Right.
They're into this like stupid celebrity culture stuff.
Right. Pop culture. Yeah. Actually, is In Touch a real magazine?
It is. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it is. While they're talking about, the benefits of reading In Touch versus reading the newspaper, the very funny thing about Syria.
Right. That's where Dee picks up the newspaper that Frank's suggests that they read instead of their In Touch magazine to learn about what's going on in the world. And she immediately picks up and says, "Oh, no.
Plutonium smuggled into Syria. That's going to change my life drastically."
Right. And Dennis is complaining that, oh, no one's going to be able to go to Syria anymore on vacation.
Yeah. They're really simplifying things with their how these things can affect them.
Right.
Yeah. So they are quickly interrupted by an amazing introduction of Charlie and Mac.
Hey, what's up, bitches? What is up? Turn the TV on right now, dude. This is huge. Turn the TV on. I'm going to be on the news.
Apparently, they saw a car accident.
Wait,
if I'm remembering this
bus
correctly.
accident.
bus accident. So they see an accident, and Mac got to be one of the, you see him on the news all the time, like the bystander.
Right. But before we get into his news appearance, I just want to say that first, it's almost a classic Mac entrance where he's like, guys, big news.
Yeah.
And what they're so excited that when they come in, they're like fast walking.
They're speed walking.
Right, yeah, they're speed walking, and it's that sort of thing. It reminds me of when you're trying to walk fast but not get in trouble. And I don't know, it's just super funny the way they show their excitement, but they're sort of trying to be contained, but not really. So yeah, they're really excited. They speed walk in, and they tell the guys all about what happened that day.
So Mac was on the news, and they're gonna like turn on the TV and watch it. And there's a really great classic Charlie, shut up.
This is Ken Jacobs coming to you.
And the news comes on, and they.
Well, I think it's probably important to note that. Mac and Charlie get really excited.
Oh, right.
Because Mac goes off, quote unquote. He says that he really popped. He was really going for it. He has a whole thing about how they should only have yellow lights. He basically they set it up in a way that he talked for a while. So that's the setup. And when the newscaster says, and we have a local man who saw everything, and then when they cut to him, it's
Mac saying, it was totally crazy.
And that's it. And they cut him off.
Yeah.
And it's a classic Always Sunny bit. It's really similar to the intros, to the way they do their like cold opening sort of set. And
yes.
It's just a great moment that the punchline delivers exactly the opposite of what is supposed to be said. So when Max sets it up and then it ends up being nothing, it's just a really great moment. And so this moment, him being cut off, is what sets him and Charlie into motion.
Yeah, so they are extremely disappointed about this, as anyone would be. And so they start saying, like, you remember when we did the news for the 8th grade project, we talked about the issues that were really happening, and it was real news. And Dennis points out that...
Yeah, I remember that video. You guys were burning G.I. Joes and throwing rocks at cats.
And they say, because that's what was happening.
Yeah, exactly. That was the truth in the life of an 8th grader. It's real.
So they're just burning up. They got the fire going within them, and they decide that they are going to bring it back. They're gonna become newsmen themselves.
News talkers, yeah.
They got a camcorder.
Yeah, Charlie's got the camera. Mac is going to be the on-air celebrity, and they've got a plan.
So they're super hyped up. This is where Frank jumps in. Dee is protesting because she's like, well, someone's going to get hurt if we jump in. Right. And Frank says, I'm just palling around with the guys. How is anybody going to get hurt? Title screen, Frank set Sweet Dee on fire.
Classic.
This is like it's a consequential bit because this, if I'm correct, this is where Charlie is prepping the gear.
Right.
He's taping the flashlight to the camcorder so that the news talker will be more brighter.
Right. And also you'll hear us say the phrase news talker possibly a lot because that's how Charlie refers to a newscaster or, an anchor person. So
yeah.
He's funny.
And so they land on they're going to make this news program about the things that are really happening, and they're going to air it on public access.
Right.
Which is where they turn on public access, and we get our first taste of the dancing guy.
Hell yeah.
And I got to say, like, it is kind of mesmerizing.
Right. At first, yeah, it doesn't seem like much. Not that he's necessarily a good dancer, but he has moves. He's going for it.
Yeah. He keeps it fresh. He keeps it interesting. He's changing it up. The background's changing.
Right. Yeah.
There's some like rudimentary effects happening.
Yeah. It's like a green screen. So at first he's like in front of a waterfall and an eagle and then some kind of mountain range.
He's wearing boxer briefs and cowboy boots, and that's it.
Right. It's a great look.
Yeah, he.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that like they made it for this show or whatever, but he does exude a certain star quality.
Right. And it's one of those things. It's very awkward. And I think even as the characters, they when they first see it, they're like, what is this? This is garbage. And then actually they're like, wait, don't turn it off. Don't turn it off. Just a few minutes. And it is kind of intriguing.
And this is, I guess, where the A and the B plots start diverging, because Dennis and Dee are talking about how you can get famous without really being skilled or anything. You can just, this is the Paris Hilton tabloid
Right. Dirty Drunk and More.
era where people were famous for being famous, I guess, for lack of a better way of describing that.
Right. And so Frank with Mac and Charlie, they take a different approach. They're going to do the news. And this is where Frank suggests that they go down to the local power plant because it's giving everyone cancer. So Charlie freaks out about it, and everyone has to calm him down and say it's not. But Frank is right in that it gets the reaction. It gets the numbers.
Yeah, this is very much like, sensationalizing news, which happens probably even more now than it did then.
Right.
Where the goal is to freak you out, upset you. More so now, it's more like making you angry.
Right.
That's what the news cycle is.
Right. This is basically the original clickbait,
Right.
They just say this one simple thing you do every day could kill your children.
Yeah.
But find out what it is at the 11 o'clock news. Why am I waiting until the 11 o'clock news to find out this thing?
So Dennis and Dee are like, if Dee just becomes a dirty drunken whore and goes out to the clubs, then she's going to get famous. People are going to take pictures on their fancy camera phones. Dennis suggests some nip slips and some upskirts, which Dee, of course, is maybe not so into.
So this is a great exchange, in my opinion, because Dennis starts off saying,
You could be famous for being a dirty drunk whore. You're a dirty drunk whore already.
and so Dee protests, and she's like, well, I'm not, but I could be famous. And then he's like, yeah, totally. If we had a couple of nip slips and some upskirts. She's like, well, I'd rather pass on the upskirts and nip slips, but I do like what you're saying. And to that he replies, well, we'll get there. We'll get there eventually. And to me, this is just a classic Dennis moment of just railroading people.
Yeah. And Dennis is going to become famous by proximity.
Right. But by being her friend, which is odd.
Right.
He doesn't mention that he's her brother. That doesn't come up.
They're siblings and they hate each other.
But he's going to be her famous friend, I guess. I'm not really sure how that works.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't... There's like an avoidance of the family stuff in this show where,
Right. They don't call Frank dad.
Pretty quickly stopped calling him dad, and I guess they're more friends than twin siblings.
Yeah, I really like the conversation because it sounds like a Dennis thing. It's very classic him where he's talking to himself and ignoring everyone else in the room.
So we next see the Frank, Mac, Charlie news team. Mac is wearing the Vic Vinegar real estate jacket.
Yeah, the mustard.
Yeah, he's wearing a mustard colored jacket, the same black polo shirt that he wears when he needs to be fancy, with a tie.
Very classy.
And his dark blue Dickie work pants. And they go to a retirement home.
The Malvern Retirement Facility.
Yeah, this is a pretty dark scene.
Yeah, so Frank's looking for the story. We've seen thus far that he's just looking for the shock value, the headlines, sort of the clickbait, if you will. And he thinks or knows that there's something shady going on. He thinks there's some abuse, and the faculty is taking advantage of people. I think at one point he says there's a lot of ass rape going on. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is anecdotal, but I've heard that old people just have a lot of sex.
Yeah, there is that. There was I don't know when or where, but wasn't there like an outbreak of syphilis or something in nursing home?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it because they're old and they don't have anything, to stop them. They don't have to worry about contraception or anything. I was reading up about it quickly, and I did read that a much higher percentage of the people living with AIDS is over 50 or over a certain amount. And yeah, I thought it was weird, but it seems real.
Right. So this is where the light comes on. Max starts interviewing a resident. He's sweating a lot.
He's nervous and very sweaty.
Which becomes a bit of a theme. Yeah, so Mac is interviewing this sweet old lady, and it's a very pedestrian interview, and she's like,
well, I get up around 5. 5:30 if it's bingo the night before. Then I eat breakfast. I like to have fruit.
And then an old guy chimes in with,
She steals the grapes.
I do not.
Hey, check her purse.
yeah, and I think Charlie tells him to stop interrupting. He's like, as a last-ditch effort, Mac is like, is there anything you want to tell the world? And she's like, it's my grandson's birthday on Friday. Is there anything about this place that you don't like? And that's when she is discovered to be a crazy racist because she says,
The blacks.
Cut that.
Right. And this is sort of the turning point because prior to this, the cut, it's a terrible interview. And after this point, it's still a terrible interview, but for a different reason. So Mac says it's the ramblings of a crazy old racist.
right.
But Frank is upset that they actually stopped because he wanted to continue. Again, he's looking for the shock value. He's looking for that drama, which he almost got.
Yeah, there's a definite clash of ideals happening with the news team where Frank is going for this like crazy sensationalist, controversial angle, and the other guys, they're from the place where you throw rocks at cats and you burn GI Joes. Maybe they're not the hardest hitting journalists out there.
Well, Mac and Charlie just want to get to the truth, and they don't think the ramblings of a crazy racist old woman is necessarily the truth that they want to expose.
Sure.
So at this point, Frank may suggest burning the place down for the story, but they don't. They also discuss how it's freezing in there, but Mac's sweating.
I meant to bring this up. How are you sweating so much? It's freezing. Is it?
Yeah,
It's freezing.
they try to keep them alive because meat spoils slower in the fridge.
Oh, so they keep...
Right, which is very similar to the Oldies Rock Cafe.
Yeah, exactly the same.
So at this point, Charlie says that, he knows the spot, and they head off to Chinatown to look for a story.
And this is, I'm assuming, filmed in Philadelphia's Chinatown.
Yes, yeah. There's an establishing shot that shows the arch, the Chinatown archway in Philadelphia. And there's a venue that you may have played called the Trocadero Theater right there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Have you played any memorable shows? Do you have any noteworthy?
I don't have anything specific, no.
I guess I don't have anything specific or noteworthy, like a good story, but Breaking Pangea did play one of our first bigger shows at the Troc with Saves the Day and Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we were the the local opener, first of 3, first of 4 maybe. And as like a hometown local band, it was very exciting for us.
It's a big deal for me now, just hearing about it.
Nice. So the Troc was a great venue. I think it's an old vaudeville theater or something, just a very iconic.
Is it still around?
To be honest, I don't know. I feel like a slacker, but I haven't been to Philly in so long. I'm kind of out of the loop with it.
I mean, who knows if any venues are open.
Right. Did you happen to see the Grammys?
Did not.
It was pretty cool. They actually had staff from various venues around the country, like actually doing the nomination announcements and announcing the winners and, reading off the little envelope and all that.
Cool.
Yeah, they had a venue in Nashville. The owner got to announce one of the categories. It was like the kind of venue where Sturgill Simpson, if that's like a guy.
It is.
Yeah, him and Chris Stapleton.
There you go.
Those kind of people kind of got their start, or were staples. And he read one. And then there was somebody from the Hotel Cafe who I think was either a bartender or just like the manager. And she got to announce one. I think she actually ended up showing up live. So it was pretty cool to see that, that level of involvement from local venues. So it was cool to see them shed light on that because the average person watching probably knew about artists, but probably didn't think much about venues. Yeah. Having the same tough time that everyone
They probably hadn't even thought about it until it, and it's like, oh yeah, of course.
Right, yeah.
Everything's closed.
Yeah, so I don't know. I thought that was a cool thing to do. But to go back to your point, I don't know if the Troc is still around or will be, or any other venue around the country for that matter. We'll just have to see when things, come back.
Yeah, it's very, very sad. Yeah, so they're in Chinatown. They got their radars up. They're looking for any sort of newsworthy events happening. They see a guy who just looks like a normal guy, and he could be a drifter, which they're referring to Tokyo Drifting, which I think the movie had maybe just come out around this time.
Yeah, it was probably like a hip reference.
And yeah, so he's going to be sliding sideways in his car, and you know what that leads to.
You know what happens with Tokyo drifting? It leads to bickering,
Oh, they
which
always
of course
bicker.
leads to karate.
Right, which eventually will lead to dudes flying from like window to window and treetop to
Shooting
treetop.
lightning bolts out of their...
Yeah, there's the guy that shoots the lightning bolts out of his hands. He wears a big straw hat and he
Okay,
and
we're
he
on the
does
same
that
page.
move. His eyes go
Let's do
all
it.
white and shit.
Let's do
and
it.
Kurt Russell fights him.
So at this point, they're getting into big trouble in Little China. And, well, I wouldn't call it stream of consciousness, but what would you call this?
Yeah, it's a weird tangent of
Yeah, it's a word association.
yeah,
or-
just like things from movies. It's Tokyo Drift, it's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon,
Yep.
and it's Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, so basically they're doing some sort of vague movie reference
Right.
rabbit hole, and Frank is done with it. He moves on. He's out of the shot, and they're almost out of the shot by the time they culminate with this tirade, ending with Kurt Russell.
Yeah, and then you fight Kurt Russell at the end. Yeah, as they walk away, which leads to I think my favorite scene in this episode, which is
Yes,
a bit of
yes.
a bit of a bit,
The
but
fish.
the guys just trading fish back and forth is awesome.
It's so good. Yeah, so I guess it's a similar sort of establishing shot in Chinatown to make sure you know where they are.
right.
And so they're at, they've got fishmongers on either side of the sidewalk, and the gang is just walking through them. And yeah, Charlie points out that not just trading this fish back and
Yeah.
forth one after another, but Charlie points out they're trading the same exact fish head from one guy to the next.
I had the thought that it was maybe like they set that up to be like, so there's people and things happening on the street when they get to Chinatown.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
what the director had them do, and then they're maybe just like making a meta observation about it, like these guys are just passing the same shit back and forth over and
Right.
over and over.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, it really feels like they got the fish sellers, but they didn't get any fish buyers.
Right.
There was no one there at the market to buy the fish.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah,
it's very
so
funny.
good. And yeah, it's Charlie being meta.
After they see the guys passing the fish back and forth, they see a crowd of people like outside of a store.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
outside of a business. Yeah, so I guess Mac thinks that it's probably like a martial arts
Like a demonstration.
expo of some kind, just I'm based on literally nothing.
Right. Well, basically, he assumes that every time.
Yeah, so they go in, they like fight their way up to the front. They got the camera on, the flashlights on.
Good afternoon, Philadelphia. We're here in Chinatown where a large crowd has gathered for what can only be a martial arts showdown.
And it's just people playing Wii tennis.
Yeah, it's so good. After Mac's dramatic, news intro, it literally is just people playing video games, and somebody gets a point, and it's announced that the score is 30-love. Bit of a letdown.
And Mac is also sweating again.
Oh,
profusely
yeah.
at this point.
Constantly wiping his face and his makeup all over.
So like they're initially disappointed because it's just people playing video games. It's not guys doing karate or anything. But the guy next to Mac, who is holding chopsticks and a Chinese takeout box, starts choking. There's like, does anyone know how to do the Heimlich? Like, I don't know how to do the Heimlich. No, you do it. So Mac just punches the guy.
Also, I just want to interrupt and point out that this guy's version of choking, his acting as a choking victim, is crazy because he's just like coughing and wheezing, and
I'm sure
he's breathing so much while he's doing this. So I'm not really sure if I'm buying it.
But he can breathe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's no obstruction to his airway. But sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
So please.
It's fine. I assumed that it was a stunt guy, and that's maybe like some of the acting wasn't great because he's going to get punched in the stomach.
Right. He did have to take a hit.
So that was my interpretation.
Right. So so instead of the Heimlich, which Mac doesn't know how to do, he punches him. That causes the guy to spit out whatever he was theoretically choking on, and Mac saves the day, and so Mac's stoked and he feels like a hero. And the best part is that everything was captured on film, and it's great. It's better than the original story. As long as Charlie got it.
Which leads to a great Charlie line of, I did and I didn't, I did and I didn't.
You got that, right? Oh, I did it, Frank. I did it.
Right. So this is, coming into this is pretty good because Frank sets him up by saying, like, what are you talking about? You pointed the camera at him, right? So this is where Charlie unfortunately has to explain that as he was taping the flashlight to the camera, to get a more professional look, he realized that he hadn't put the videotape in the camera at that point. And he only had so much duct tape left. He wasn't going to be able to cut the tape, put the videotape back in, and then re-tape the flashlight. So he figured, we'll go with what we have now.
Right. Which, the logic is a little shaky, but so they don't have a tape in there. They didn't have a tape in there at the retirement home.
They lost everything.
Right. So then this is what sparks the idea for the rest of this episode for them, is that they're going to recreate these events.
These heroic moments. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that they're not so much worried about the specific event of him saving someone, but they really like the way he looked as a hero in that sense.
So they're going to go back to the bar. They're going to put a tape in, and then they're just going to recreate this event, which leads to recreating other events. Now the question is do you want to go with their story or do you want to go with the Dennis and Dee story at this point?
Yeah, I say we switch gears because I think if we switch over to the club world,
Dennis and Dee,
getting famous, I think that makes more sense. But unfortunately, there's not much there.
There's really not much of a story there. It's them wanting to get Dee into this club and to get her drunk and whatever. But the problem is that she's way too drunk outside of the club.
Yeah, she's the dirty drunk.
And so she falls asleep in a pile of garbage while waiting in line to get in this club. This woman with a Karen haircut asks Dennis if he wants to go with them, and so he goes into the club with them, and they offer him ecstasy.
And he has a great little montage of him dancing his face off in the club, getting sweaty, doing his thing, having a great time.
They play that disco song that's in like a zillion episodes. Yeah, he's having a great time. Glow sticks, all sweaty, dances
sweaty
until the sun comes up.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah. So that is when Dennis comes out and is blinded by the morning sun. He sees Dee in the trash, who's just waking up. She asks for help and doesn't get it from Dennis.
Yeah.
So he walks off. They both go home. So their first night was a failure. So they decide to come back for a second night. But this time, Dee can't get drunk. I think that's sort of the lesson that they've learned. So, yeah, so they come back the second night and try again.
The line is longer, I think, is what's implied.
Right. So, so they show up and there's a huge line, which makes me think that the previous night, maybe that's why she got so drunk from like waiting, or maybe they went out later. But so Dennis is explaining that, well, you don't have to wait online. If you're going to be this famous person, you just got to talk down to everyone. So he suggests that she goes to the bouncer and take a shit on him and act like a jerk. And honestly, this part's kind of a bummer. It's just not a great interaction. She's just
It's really long.
Yeah, it's really long. She's kind of mean. It's kind of weird. It just doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
When you think it's over, she does another little bit.
Right. She
him,
keeps going.
About her shoes, stepping in shit, and he's shit.
And she can't even clean them because he's such a piece of shit that if she stepped on him, she would have to throw the shoes out. And she loved those shoes. It's pretty awkward. And the bouncer really just asks Dennis if he's with her, and he says no. So Dennis is allowed into the club. And actually, my favorite part of this is a very Dennis thing, that when she's like, "You're not going to go in," he's like,
So he's on ecstasy again. He's having a great time, and he sees Dancing Guy.
Right. So Dennis is 2 for 2 for his clubbing activities. He's having a great time, and he gets to dance with Dancing Guy. And that's when we find out that he's not just in the studio in front of a green screen. He's on location.
Yeah, he's got to do his research for his television show.
Right. He's got to practice. So Dennis is 2 for 2, and Dee is 0 for 2.
And the next scene is, I guess this is next door to Patty's.
Yeah, this is the warehouse. I guess so. In theory, he bought it from the Israeli guy. So yeah,
because it would explain why he's so comfortable destroying it.
Yeah, that sort of makes sense. I don't think you care.
I was just thinking about that.
No, it's a good point.
I feel like we've tried to suss out exactly what happened there, and we don't really exactly know.
I mean, Patty's is a real estate enigma.
Yeah, so they're going to not recreate anything. They're just going to make up this heroic event where there's a box of kittens inside of a building.
Right.
It's not explicitly stated that that they're going to set it on fire at first.
Well, Mac,
Because I think Frank just says, you just go in and you save the kittens.
From what?
And Mac says, save them from what?
Are you going to set the building on fire?
No.
Charlie, are you going to set the building on fire?
Yes.
God damn it.
Yeah, Charlie gives it up pretty quick. It's not tough. And that's when Mac bails?
Right. And this is where I mentioned earlier where the A and the B plots just collide. Because Dee just wanders in because she didn't get into the club. So I guess she's walking back to Patty's.
Right.
Sees the guys outside of the warehouse next door. And is like, what are you guys doing?
Right. So since Mac is out, he does not want to run into a burning building to save some kittens. But Dee is sort of down on her luck, and, they convince her that this is an opportunity to become famous. So she agrees to save some kittens, and they neglect to mention that the building is going to be on fire. So they convince her to do it, and she does not ask about it, so yeah.
No, but she does get a clue.
Right, but at that point, she's already inside the building.
That's a good point, yeah.
Right. So, so she walks in and,
Smells overwhelmingly like kerosene in here.
Uh-huh.
yeah, and that's when we see Frank light a match and nonchalantly throw it inside the building.
And yeah, that's the way the scene is shot is where, like, in real time we see Frank throw the match and run, and then there's like a cut back to Mac and Dennis's apartment where they're watching the footage.
Right, after the fact, they're watching it happen.
Yeah, a pretty funny way of doing it. And like Dee walks in and her hair is like half black and she is upset with everyone. And they sit down and they watch the footage of her coming out of the building on fire. I think she throws the box of kittens.
Yes, absolutely.
Because everything's on fire and she's on fire. And Frank is putting her out with the fire extinguisher.
Right, and that's where she comes in and says that she actually looks pretty good. She's like, hey, I don't look so bad, and she's impressed with herself.
Right.
But they're upset with her because she ruined the shot. They're complaining that she threw the box of kittens, so it's over, and she's like, I'm on fire. What am I supposed to do?
Is this a good spot to point out that I was on fire once?
Yes, this is a great spot. There's no better spot than right now, actually.
Yeah. Have I told this story in this podcast? No, probably not.
No. I think we've talked about it.
Yeah.
But you were saving it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but this is actually one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. So I was just texting with my parents this morning because I was like, I didn't remember what year it happened. They said 95 or 96. And also when I asked about that, they sent me a picture of the basketball shorts that I was wearing, which I forwarded to you.
Yeah, I love that.
Where there is one leg with the University of Colorado logo on, and the other leg is missing.
Yep. Well, it's melted.
As I've mentioned many times on this podcast, I grew up on a farm, a ranch, more aptly put, and so every summer I would work, for my parents and do. There's a lot of upkeep. The night before, there had been like a pretty gnarly Great Plains style thunderstorm with very high winds and tons of rain, and a bunch of tree limbs had fallen because of the wind. So my dad, this happened like sort of regularly, like it wasn't out of the ordinary that something like this would happen. So my dad had, his tractor with the little scoop thingy on the front, and he had like gone around to all the limbs that had fallen and picked them up and moved them into this field, this kind of like empty field. So, all of the stuff could be burned. So it wasn't just like, sitting around or whatever. It was just to be destroyed. So since this happened to, live trees, they still had leaves on them. They were not dry.
Right.
Is what I'm getting at.
Right,
It was very, very alive wood. So the only way you can get something like that to burn is with a accelerant. I was using gasoline. I had a canister of gasoline, and I had a bunch of stuff to do that morning. So I was in a hurry, and I was like, God damn it, this thing won't burn. There's no way. So I pour gasoline all around. I pour a little bit on the fire, light it, burns for like a few seconds probably at most.
Right. So the gasoline is burning, but the
gas is burning, but that's all.
The wood
that's
isn't.
It.
Yeah.
The wood's not burning. Or there like maybe some stuff on the like outside is burning or like here and there, but it's not moving like I need it to move. So do the same thing again, repeat it a few times, and eventually I get so frustrated that I stand on top of the pile and I'm just pouring gas in the middle to try to get it to go all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. The problem is that I can't get any flames into the middle of the pile.
Right.
It's a huge pile. So I'm standing on top of it and I'm dumping this gasoline on it. And of course, there are still plenty of spots that had already been alight or that were still warm. I don't know exactly.
Right.
Anyways, the whole thing combusted with me standing on top of it. And I'm wearing these basketball shorts. And so I don't really you don't remember these like how you reacted super clearly. I know that I threw the can of gasoline because that was my first concern.
Right. Yep.
And that was fine. And then all I remember is just being like, something is very hot, very hot, very hot. My right leg is very hot. And I look down and I see that it's on fire. My shorts are on fire. And I did not think of stop, drop, and roll. I thought, I got to get away from this shit. So I'm like running and I'm pulling the shorts off at the same time. And eventually what happens is these shorts are, what are they made out of? What's that?
Right. I don't know.
That fabric
like
called?
Mylar, some plastic kind of whatever. Yeah.
Plasticky stuff. So what I don't realize in this like panic is that these shorts have melted to my leg at this point. And so I'm running and I pull them off and I pulled off a bunch of skin on the back of my leg because the shorts had like fused to my leg because of the heat. So I finally get them off and I'm just like standing in my boxers being like, holy shit, that was scary. And I remember my parents coming up to me and being like, we got to take you to the hospital. So I'd ripped off the skin on the back of my leg and then I had burned, like as it was going down, I also burned like the lower part of my leg, the back of my right leg. And of course, since we lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere, the nearest doctor's office, not hospital, doctor's office was, a good 30 minutes away. I remember going to the bathroom before we left and looking at the back of my leg and I felt like I could literally see the blisters.
Oh, yeah. That's
popping out. Because at first I was like, okay, it's not that bad. It's just like, a little burned. But then, the blisters started like expanding.
Oof, yeah. And filling.
So we drive to the doctor's office. It's just a nurse there. The doctor is stuck in this like road construction 30 miles away. So he's not there. So they can't do anything for me. And I just have to lay on my stomach while my skin is just like sizzling and popping. Anyways, it took months to heal. I don't really have, the scars aren't too bad. I had to my leg was wrapped for the entire summer. I couldn't really do anything. Had to apply this crap to it like 4 times a day. It was pretty disgusting. There's a lot of pictures of the healing process that I remember my parents took, which I wonder if I can get them to send some of that stuff.
Yeah, we need that.
I mean, it just looked like meat.
Oof.
First, it was like, huge blisters. And then they filled with fluid.
Right.
And they eventually popped. And then the last bit, it just looked like meat. Once the blisters were gone, it was just like raw steak.
Now, they say that the sense of smell is the most strongly correlated to recollection.
Oh, yeah.
So
yes.
Is there any specific smell that reminds you? I'm assuming it's like gasoline, but...
There was definitely gasoline. No, I mean, because all my leg hair burned off and didn't grow back. It took so long that I was a little concerned that maybe it wasn't going to grow back. I had the smoothest fucking leg.
Ooh, you are a smooth boy.
Yeah, I got some hairy legs. Hairy for
relatively
in context.
Yeah. So, is there any recollection or trigger for the smell of burning flesh?
Yes, there was smell. It was a combination of gasoline, the plastic basketball shorts, hair, and skin.
Ooh,
so yeah,
crispy.
I had a little bit of a fire phobia there for a while, but it didn't really stick around. I feel like I'm okay with it. I think I'm extra careful, but I'm not like afraid of fire.
That's good. So my story is a lot different, and I was very fortunate that I didn't light myself on fire. nor did I light anyone else on fire. It happened while I was at sleepaway camp, and to be honest, it might have been right around the same time. I might have been a little younger than you, but I think I'm a little older than you, so it might be perfect. Anyway, so I'm at sleepaway camp, but
Sure.
I'm not normally at sleepaway camp. This is the only summer that I'm doing it because my mother works at a summer camp and a nursery school during the year. But every summer I went to this specific day camp. But this one summer I went with a high school friend, and it was going to be awesome. And it was my first time at sleepaway camp.
Sure.
So I was excited. And the summer went fine. It went great. Got in trouble. Not too big of a deal. But are you familiar with hairspray plus a lighter?
Oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
burned my fingers a little bit with that.
So that's what we were playing
Was it
with.
Arachnophobia? Was that the movie where we gave everyone the idea?
Possibly, but I don't think I ever saw it because I actually am afraid of spiders. So,
I think that's what inspired at least
right.
at least some people.
Yeah. So we're so the second half of the summer had started, and this kid Ricky had come up for just the second half. So there's two, the first half, second half. Some people go for both. I was there for both. Second half of this summer just started. He showed up like 2 days prior, and we're getting into it. Mm-hmm. And we've got some hairspray or something, some aerosol can and a lighter, and we're making fireballs inside a wooden cabin. It's just a wood structure, 2x4 framing and blah, blah, blah. And there's a space in between the front half where you have the bunks and the back half where you have like the showers and cubbies and bathrooms. So in that doorway, it's like the bottom half of the top of the doorway.
Very cool.
So we were spraying hairspray on this doorway piece, the top of the doorway, and it would drip down and it would create these fireballs and, just like liquid flame dripping. And that was pretty fun. But then we decided to spray the hairspray into that. And now we're talking about like a few, feet of flames at like 6 feet tall, and then another few feet of like a fireball igniting from that. So you could see it from far away. So our counselor came charging in to the cabin, and rightfully so.
It's just wood. It's just wood.
Yeah, so he came charging into this wooden structure that we're lighting on. We're literally lighting the cabin on fire, but we thought we had it under control. So, so he comes charging in and grabs us basically by the scruff of the neck and drags us down to what would be the head, not the camp director, I guess. Whoever that would, and he claims that he was just there to scare us, but he dragged us down to the camp director's office and sat us outside, and he was just gonna make us sweat a little bit, but the camp director actually saw us and had, then we had to explain what was happening, and I don't know, maybe he was making it up and he was gonna, get us actually in trouble the whole time or not, but the point is, we got in trouble, we got kicked out, we were both removed. And for me, it was like bad, but I had been there for like a month. So, but Ricky, I had been there all summer, but Ricky had been there for 2 days. So his parents, wherever they came from to drop him off, they had to come back like 3 days later to pick him up, which I thought was pretty insane. So, so my parents had to come pick me up. But I guess, it happened on a Thursday or something, or, a Wednesday, and they couldn't get off work. So I had to get quarantined basically in the nurse's office. Yeah, in the brig. And so I had to spend time, and it was probably like a day or so, but, it felt like forever. So, that's the story of me getting kicked out of camp. And I remember talking to someone through the window, and it was like being in jail.
You were in the brig.
And I guess I'm pretty lucky because that is all that happened. All I happened was I got kicked out.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, exactly. I could have been on the news for killing a bunch of kids.
Right.
Oops.
Sounds like it's a miracle that you didn't.
Yep. Anyways.
Always Sunny. So they go to a well, and they threw the kitties in the well, and now they're gonna have Dee go in there because, we haven't had a good well story in mainstream American news for a while.
Dee thinks that the well thing is kind of played out. That's over.
Wasn't that in like the 80s? Like baby Jessica
Yeah, exactly.
was stuck in the well? Yeah, I remember that.
For the past 48 hours, Jessica McClure has become, I guess, the most famous 18-month-old child in the world, stuck at the bottom of a 22-foot well.
There's actually a really good Simpsons episode where they do a well episode, and it's got a We Are the World song. I don't know if they had one in real life, but the song in The Simpsons is about a baby falling down a well, and it's so good. We're sending our love down the well, and Krusty does the solo R&B.
Nice.
All that way down.
We're sending our love down the well. All the way down.
Dee says, like, you're not going to set it on fire. Frank says no. She goes down in the well to get the kittens, and of course, he sets it on fire. Same thing happens. She comes out. She throws the kittens.
Classic.
She's on fire, etc., etc. So they're, again, reviewing the footage at Dennis and Mac's apartment.
Right. And again, she ruins it.
Yeah, it's unusable because she threw the box at the end. And Dennis happens to be home while they're reviewing the footage and asks them to keep it down.
Right, because he's got the hangover from the club night. Yeah, he's been in it for a while.
Yeah, he's a club kid.
Yeah, he's clubbing.
And he has some sage advice.
Right, yeah. So they're trying to figure out how to get her famous and how to create her as a hero without throwing the kittens. They just want to get the story, actually. Yeah, they don't care about Dee being famous, but... So Dennis says, hey, I'm in with these club people, and they're like a big deal in Philadelphia, and I can get her in, you know? I can get these girls to approve her. She'll be a celebrity, you know, because celebrity saving a kitties, that's a story.
Right. Yeah, his belief is that exactly, like, you need to be a famous person doing something heroic is the move, rather than just a heroic viral event.
Right, yeah. So he's kind of saying that both schemes need to work in tandem. You know, you need to combine the A and the B plot.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas before they were trying it individually and it just wasn't working. So now that he's in touch, he's ready to do it.
And this is where Charlie gets the glimmer of hope that he gets to chop a cat.
Right. The unnecessary chopping. Yeah. So their new plan is not a burning building, not a burning well. It's a conveyor belt of some sort with cats on it, and there's a chopping device at the end.
Right. And Charlie is extremely excited about chopping up a cat, which they have to repeatedly tell him that they're not going to get to that point.
Let's chop cats!
No, we don't actually chop the cats. Dee grabs them before.
Well, we'll
they
chop
get
a couple
chopped.
cats just so that you know it's real.
The idea is to save them from the chopping, and Charlie is really hung up on actually taking this blade and slicing the cat.
We're going to chop a couple of cats.
There's a great interaction where Dennis, brings up, like, Dee comes with me to the club. I'll make her famous. Then she can do your thing. And Mac's like, isn't she like really upset with you? Like, she's not pathetic enough to want to be famous via you after you've treated her like shit.
And another great classic cut.
I can't believe how famous I'm about to be.
Right. She's at the bar and she's falling for it.
Yeah, it's a great cut.
Yeah, and if this is the third time we've seen that like quick cut classic Philly moment. So Dennis introduces Dee to all the cool girls at the club, and they talk about how skinny she is. She's crack skinny, which is great. That's a compliment.
They can make or break you in this town.
Right. These are the cool girls.
And of course, they offer Dennis a hit of ecstasy, which he says no because he's working on something, which is, making Dee famous. She peer pressures him into taking it. He gets one for Dee, and then we cut back to the bar where the chopping mechanism is being tested.
Right. Yeah. So there's a fake rubber cat doll, and it's on a conveyor belt that's
like a manual conveyor belt.
Yeah. It's got a hand crank. And so Mac is cranking that. Charlie is at the end with a meat cleaver. And
meat cleaver, that's what that is. Yeah. I couldn't think of the word.
So he's chopping it mechanically at the end. But he is concerned that it's a good plan in general, but he's concerned that someone's going to see his hand chopping the cat. And, they want it to seem like a machine. So he can't figure that out.
Yeah, but if Sweet Dee doesn't make it in time, you're going to see me chop the cat. No, just don't chop the cat. Oh, I can't make that promise.
Yeah. He can't make the promise. It's so good. So he smacks the cat, I guess that's when Dee and Dennis come back in, right?
Yeah, they've got the ecstasy blues. They're in a bad state. They're coming down hard. They've been out all night. Yeah, it's not really clear at the time that he says it, but Dennis is like, we're done with this. We're not doing this anymore. We're over the trying to be famous thing.
Right. Yeah. It's a little unclear, but it's obvious to us that they had a bad night.
You're kind of like, I wonder what could have happened.
Right. What happened
that would lead to this reaction.
Yeah.
I think the TV's on, and I think Dancing Guy starts. Dee and Dennis are like, we got to turn that off.
Right.
And Charlie
they don't want it.
Points the meat cleaver at Dee, I believe.
Right.
And it's like, no, we're leaving Dancing Guy on.
Dancing Guy's a great show. Charlie.
Right. Everyone loves Dancing Guy, so this is like his third time. Yeah.
Right. And it's diaper time. The whole gang is watching, and we see Dennis and Dee wearing diapers.
Grinding up on each other.
Grinding on each other.
Just going for it in full diaper. Yeah. That's
basically it. They just all watch Dennis and Dee.
Diaper time it up.
It was a great episode. I'm giving it an A-.
And I will give it an A+. Why not?
Crazy.
Shocking.
There was some great stuff in this episode. The Dennis doing ecstasy, which also I haven't really mentioned that I enjoyed that quite a bit because he does a very good job of
being on ecstasy. I can't really describe it any other way. I love it. I love Charlie getting hung up on the chopping the cat thing. Oh my God. Gotta chop a few cats.
Max sweating profusely, and also like the makeup job they do on him.
Right. It almost looks like a dumpster baby vibe, Maybe it's shoe polish,
right.
Who knows?
Right. And Frank's opening line, he doesn't really have a lot to do in the actual episode. He's in the whole episode, but he's like...
Right. Yeah, he's more of a catalyst, I guess.
This is more of the like younger gang. He's just kind of along for the ride.
Oh, did I mention that one of my favorite lines was when Dee and Dennis are waiting to get into the club, and Dee says, just go be mean to the bouncer, take a shit on him. And Dee says, I don't want to take a shit on him.
Yeah. Yeah, she's very hesitant at first, and then just like goes way, way, way too far. Yeah. As always. Speaking of the club scenes, I was also going to point out that we'll call her Karen, the main ecstasy provider,
the main mean girl.
One of Karen's friends looks a lot like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't notice that.
Just maybe take a peek later. I mean. She looks like a little bit older than the rest of them.
Okay.
She's got an MTG vibe about her.
All right.
She's a very bad dancer.
Were you aware that Marjorie Taylor Greene won her election by 75%-ish?
Because she ran uncontested. Saw that.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
25% of the people voted against her.
Right.
But she had no opponent.
Anyways, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you feel like it, you should go on to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating.
Do it.
You could leave a review.
What?
You could follow us on Twitter at Always Stockholm, and you can follow us now on Instagram at
Kill It.
Always_Stockholm.
Memes.
Cool.
Images.
Well, I'm going to end this recording now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Your heart is true. You're a pal and a confidant.
I love you.
And if I threw a party and invited everyone I knew, you would see the biggest... If you threw a party and invited everyone you knew, you would see the biggest gift would be from me, and the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend.
Aw, that's so sweet. Thank you.
I just fucked up that one part about who's throwing the party.
No, you did great. You did great. Plus, if I threw a party, you'd be the only one there.
Now I know what music to play at the end of this episode.
Perfect. Nailed it.